All right, we're all in attendance, and I think we're ready to go, so we'll call the meeting to order. We can start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We will follow the agenda as outlined in the board book, because hold on a second. I'm just trying to, because we're obviously not sitting across from each other and it's harder to see. Just remind everybody to be patient, and I'll try to make sure that I pause in the appropriate places to allow people to speak. Ask you again, if you're, all the board members, if you're not actually talking, if you go ahead and mute your line, that helps us so that there's not extraneous noise and information kind of coming across. And I can also then see you easier if I see your line being unmuted, that I want to make sure that I recognize the appropriate board members, that kind of stuff. The other thing I want to say is just some little housekeeping items. Per the motion at our last meeting, the board members are all attending via teleconference, and we have some special procedures in place. If there's any voting and that kind of stuff, to make sure that we go by, all the votes will be taken by roll call vote. And so that we make sure that we recognize each person's vote, and we can take notes appropriately. The other thing that I want to make sure I clarify and people understand is that while Facebook Live, and we're live streaming this via Facebook, and that allows people to make comments and ask questions and that kind of stuff, by addressing any of those items during the meeting, it would be like we're recognizing people that are just talking on the floor and that kind of stuff, and that would kind of not be according to our policies. So we ask people if they have questions about what is said at the board meeting, or any of those types of things, that they address them to the superintendent, and follow basically the normal processes that they would have in place to address the teachers or the principals or whatever that might be, and that the Facebook Live is not an intention to allow direct public participation in the board meeting, but rather, again, this is a public board meeting, so that it's being held in the public by us streaming that. So hopefully everybody understands that. And again, we ask patience for each other. Any questions from the board members on that? No, sir. Okay. And that most of the time, I will just continue to take silence as agreement. If you have anything to say, you can certainly address me. The other thing I would say is that we still do allow public participation in the board meeting per our normal policy, and you would contact the superintendent to be able to do that, and then we would provide that individual, if they wanted to participate in the same way that we would if we were all sitting in the boardroom, that they would participate in a teleconference in the same way that all the board members are participating. Okay. So with that, I will ask the board members, are there any additions to the agenda that was published via board book? Okay. Any committee reports to be added? Okay, if there are I don't hear anybody, but if there are ones that want to come up or want to mention, we can mention that during the reports in the committee report section. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeremy with your superintendent's report.
Sure. Yeah, distance learning, obviously what we spent our last three weeks, feels like a lot longer than that, but 3 weeks on is off and running. 1 weekend of distance learning, continuing to look and adapt and make changes as needed. There's still lots of stuff coming from MDE that we'll talk about it when we get a little bit lower in the agenda. That continues to change. I think we're still in a very good spot. We have wonderful resources, a solid plan. Now we're in the stage of trying to troubleshoot anything that comes up to make sure we're meeting everybody's needs. Our next step is going to be stuff we started to talk about now last Friday and today is staff development and training, so we can optimize our lessons and optimize the learning there with that. The other big announcement, I guess, that came last week was that MCA assessments have been waived for the year. Minnesota did apply for a waiver for that, and that was approved along with some other states throughout the country. We also don't anticipate being able to complete NWEA assessments this spring, and so that's we'll see what happens, I guess, in May, but we're going to try to figure out how things progress from there, and that may be a little bit of a wrinkle in some of our goals and things like that. So as of right now, MCA assessments are for sure waived, and then the NWEA most likely will not take place as well. And that's about all I have.
Okay, one of the things that your report there reminded me of was the goals, and so one of the items that would have carried forward from last month's meeting to this month's would be the strategic planning. In discussions with the superintendent, I didn't think it was appropriate to take a focus off of the distance learning to talk about strategic goals and so forth, especially because we know many things are changing and in flux at this point. And so we'll come back and revisit that again next month, but just wanted to know that got pushed off. And obviously, as you just mentioned, with MCAs, NWAs, all those types of things, we're going to have to, figure out how to do those items going forward. Okay. All right. Coming back to committee reports, are there any items for discussion, committees or those types of things? I believe the committees, have any committees met? I just wanted to put that out, or ask that question. Probably haven't met since last board. So I'm going to assume that committees haven't met. Again, we'll come back to those in the next things. Ask that, each of you touch base with your staff representation for the committees and see if there's a plan to meet this next month, so we can get those committee reports in. Thank you. We're on to the consent agenda then.
Motion to accept from Jason.
Okay, so Jason Kindred moves to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And I heard Lori, so we'll take a second from Lori. Okay. Any discussion items? Any discussion at all on the consent agenda?
Jeremy, the only question I have in regards to the financial report is, has the state said anything as to what they're going to do to make us whole?
Well, that's been a big bulk of our discussion. As a matter of fact, last Tuesday, the finance directors throughout the state.
So Jim, I'm going to ask you to hold on to that for a second. We'll just pull item C off there, and we can have that as a separate discussion.
Okay.
Any other items for discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the rest of the consent agenda minus item C, signify by saying aye. And I'll go down the line. Aaron?
Aye.
Aye. Connie?
Aye.
Jason? Aye. Lori?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And then myself, I'm aye. So, consent agenda items are approved unanimously. Then item C, go ahead, Jeremy, then, and take Ryan's question.
Yeah, so like I was saying, the MDE and the finance directors throughout the state and superintendents were on a conference call last Tuesday to discuss some of this. And as far as losses in money, they're not, as far as we know right now, they're not doing anything to take care of that. And where we see losses are fee-based programs, things like community ed, school lunch with the reimbursements for school lunch. We're losing it, even though we are feeding, 500-600 meals a day. Typically we do a 3,000 or 25 to 3,000, 2,500 to 3,000. We lose out on those 2,000 or so reimbursements. Any fee-based programs we're losing out on, and what they've told us is we have to pay most of those positions. We have to pay based on contractual agreements, and so that's where we're losing some of the money. I've written some letters to the legislature and state and U.S. and so we're working on that a little bit. What they've allowed us to do is to pull from other funds, and so they've given us a lot more flexibility in what we can use to purchase, put our expenditures under, and so that does help a little bit, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of funds where there's a huge amount of money that we can shift over. We're talking about upwards of around $600,000 if we don't get some type of reimbursements or things like that for this year. Now we are saving costs as well. We have supply costs. We're not going through as much paper towels and cleaning supplies and things like that. We are saving on our heating at this time, and cooling will come into play here soon. So there will be savings there. We've dropped the temperature in the buildings where we don't have students and people. We've saved on transportation by using the vans instead of the buses. So there are some savings there, but it's not calculating out to the same amounts as what we can do to balance it out. So it's the fees and things like that we've lost or may lose in the future if they cancel spring sports. Again, that's a potential $50,000 to $80,000 difference in fees that we would lose, and paying the coaches as well. So we lose on both ends of that, as in the expenditures and the revenue side. So Kevin and I are working on things with that, but I encourage anyone that's in support of the schools to write the legislature to let them know that some of those fee-based programs are things that can hurt schools.
Yeah, and I would say one of the key fee-based programs that I think you and I have at least touched base on is school readiness.
Yep, and that's a big one as well. We've decided to continue to do school readiness through distance learning, and so they're working with the families as well with that. And and the other issue we have is some families, if they lose their jobs and things like that, need to pull out of different programming and things like that as well. So it is something we're working on, something we're taking a hard look at. And like I said, we've written 3 different letters and that we've sent out to them, which included community ed, food service, and athletics and other fee-based programs, including school readiness. And so there's some work to be done. And the first thing I think the governor said about schools when they initially talked about this in mid-March was that schools are going to be made whole. And what they've done for that is just continue to provide our revenue stream based on our average daily membership like they would have anyway had we had normal school. So yeah, it's there. It's going to be something that's going to affect us. In kind of relation to that, the finance committee, Kevin and I talked this morning at our weekly meeting, and he's going to be sending out some stuff for that coming up again soon, because we missed our March 22nd meeting in the middle of all this.
Okay, Ryan, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I'm good.
ask you if you want to move item C then.
I so move.
Okay, so it's moved by Ryan.
Second from Jason.
And second from Jason. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, again, we'll move down, to give your vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Connie?
Aye.
Jason? Aye. Lori?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
And myself is aye. Adopted unanimously. Okay. And Jeremy, I turn it back over to you for the distance learning plan update.
Yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit, hit on some pieces for that. Just a reminder, it's a fluid document, and so it's continually changing. We changed it, I think, even the day we put it out there on Friday, we had some changes. Each week, the superintendents have calls with the Department of Education, the commissioner and the assistant commissioner and others on their staff, and we get updates and new information, and sometimes it's conflicting information from what was previously said. But again, they're trying to do the best they can in this time of this unprecedented time, I guess, that we keep talking about. And so we have given them some flexibility as well, but we've changed some things based on that. One of the things that is potentially changing is our food service, and that was one thing we changed already, where we were giving meals out every day. We've changed that to 2 days a week and giving multiple meals on the Tuesday for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the Friday we do a delivery for Friday and Monday. But we've gotten word that we're not getting reimbursed for a big chunk of those meals, and so we're not sure if we're going to be able to continue that or not. I've sent some emails out to the Department of Education, and I'm waiting to hear back. We sent that on, I think, on Thursday. Well, it would have been Thursday night after that phone call. And so we're waiting to hear back on that to see if we can get reimbursement at least for the emergency care workers, because we are feeding the children who are coming in for emergency care as part of our daycare, so they don't have to bring in meals. We can provide them with the meals out of our kitchen. But right now we're not getting reimbursed for those. That was as of April 1st. So in March everything got reimbursed, but starting on April 1st they've changed the tune to that a little bit, and they're waiting on some different waivers and some different grants and things like that from the U.S., like the USDA and other groups like that. So food service, look for, if you're getting food delivered to you right now, look for some announcements, hopefully coming out tomorrow on that. We want to send those out as soon as we get word from the Department of Ed what we're going to be doing. The biggest issue with that is if we're delivering to your home and you're not on free and reduced, that might not be able to continue, and so again, we're looking at the possibility of keeping that going and then seeing what the Department of Ed will do to help us out. Transportation is another big piece that we've been working on the whole time. They've been doing a wonderful job. They've been super flexible. They've helped with loading. They've been doing some deliveries of materials. They did some special ed deliveries as well, and some other things like that. So they've been extremely flexible, and they've been doing a great job working with us. And they keep saying, we keep asking them to do new things or different things, and they keep saying, just let us know, and if the more advance notice you give us, the better. But if you need something, we'll take care of it. So Tom and his department have been doing a wonderful job with that, along with the food service and the other groups as well. Technology, that was a question that came up quite a bit earlier. What we've been doing for technology for the people who didn't have internet access is we've been trying to work with them to try to get that access. Midco, Arvig, some of the other companies have really helped us out and stepped up as well with that. And we've been working with the principals, so the teachers, if you do not have internet access, or you're watching this on it's not as reliable source, but if you don't have internet access, talk to your teacher or contact the principal via email, and we can see what we can do to help you out with internet access. I think we're down to under 20, or so that don't have access, and so, we've got some really good solutions for those people, but they need to go through their teacher or their principal, and then they'll contact the technology staff, and we'll work with them and get that taken care of, so the technology piece isn't a barrier for us anymore.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Mark. I didn't want to interrupt you and all these other things that are going on, but I did want to go back to the meals thing, because it comes up for me is, if people want to use their own lunch account to pay for their meals, can they do that?
That is one of the questions we asked Department of Ed. Questions we have is, can we continue to serve emergency care? Can people pay for the meals if we continue to deliver it? Anyone that picks up a meal doesn't get counted. They do get reimbursed, anyone that picks up the meal. So the biggest conflict right now is that we're delivering door to door to everyone, and they're telling us that we're only supposed to be delivering door to door to free and reduced without, that's a confidential piece, and so we're not able to tell the drivers who's free and reduced, but those are the only people we can deliver to. So that's where some of that conflict lies. But yeah, the emergency workers, can they pay for lunch? If we're delivering to them?
I guess my question was, can anybody, if they choose to have their kids' lunches delivered, can they choose to pay out of their own lunch account for those? I would think we could do that.
Yep. That's what we're checking on. That's the email. That's one of the questions in the email. So as soon as we get that, we'll find out, and then we'll word our notification to people with that.
Okay, thank you. And just while I haven't paused, are there any other questions from other board members? Okay, so silence means move on there.
Okay. Just one more thing I thought of with the food delivery is there is no school on Friday and Monday, so we don't deliver on those days. But we have been working with our ministerial staff, local parishes, and today we went up to Brainerd and we picked up, I don't know how many meals, 2,500 meals, I believe, that feed a family of 4 to 6. Each meal feeds a family of 4 to 6. And so we plan on delivering that for coverage for the weekend. Now, schools can't provide that, but we are still going to provide the transportation to get that out. And the churches, and there are some private donations that went with that. And so we're going to be able to feed these families that are requesting meals over the weekend as well with some of those meals that they picked up from, I don't know the name right now off the top of my head, but a place out of Brainerd that has similar to Feed My Starving Children type of thing, where they give bag meals, and so families won't have to go hungry over the weekend if they need meals. So that's another bonus, and that's, again, that comes from the community and the private donations and the parishes in the community as well. So that's another huge thing that really comes out of this. That's a benefit and a positive. Special ed is the other.
And I know that there was a couple of different websites that the governor put out, and Minnesota Department of Education talked about free meals for kids. So I mean, there's some other those pieces too, and maybe we can put those on our website so that families can get connected to those.
Yeah. Trying to see what the name is. Special ed. It's the outreach program of Brainerd Lakes. Is the company that we're working with, Outreach.
That was the company that gave us the meals?
Yep. Well, that's the one where we purchased them from, yeah. They pack them there, and then we purchased them for, they give us a really good deal. I suppose they buy large quantities and get it down, so it's fairly cheap. Special ed, so the special ed is working on individualized distance learning plans, which is kind of the distance learning side of IEP type of thing. And so those are due on April 9th by case managers. the special ed staff has reached out last week. They've reached out to children, the students, and to families, and so they've already started some of that last week. I know that a few of them have done Google Meets and things like that last week, a few different ones. They're going to continue to do evaluations and keep our timelines, except for the last 2 weeks where we were off, where school was canceled by the governor during that 2-week period. But they're gonna continue to do all evaluations and things like that, and they're working through plans on how to do that, and that is in our distance learning plan, how they're gonna do that. But the case managers, special ed coordinator, Steph Lesh, and we're also working with the co-op with Heidi Nissler. They're working together to make sure we're meeting all of the legal requirements, and then making sure our students are getting the services that they need, and so that's a piece that they've really focused hard on, and that the case managers have worked really, really hard on that. I know one of the issues they had earlier this week was they felt like they were bombarding families with lots of information on Monday, and so some of it may have gotten missed, but families can certainly reach out to their case manager, their child's special teacher, or even the para if they'd like. They can email those people or the principal and get the information again. But they were bombarded with a lot of stuff because we were told to hold off until Saturday or Sunday or Monday of this last week before we were able to have contact with students. And so I think a lot of people got overwhelmed with that initially, but I think now we've gotten into a routine. It's much, much better.
So when you talk about special ed, does that include things like speech therapy and any reading assistance, or basically anybody with an IEP?
Yes, everyone with IEP, speech services. They're doing telepractice with speech. I'm familiar with that in my previous school district. We did almost all telepractice. We contracted 2 days a week with the speech provider, and so they were in our building all 5 days, but 2 days a week they met with students, and then the other 3 days they did telepractice, so they didn't have to.
Yeah, but so you're saying those guys are working on how to do that via distance learning? Yep,
and I believe they're using Google Meets and those different resources that we have. So yeah, they've different supplies have been delivered with, like I said, with the transportation group, and so they should have. As soon as April 9th hits, they should have everything they need to be as normal as they can, I guess, in this time. So, but they should be able to fit all and meet all of the legal requirements of their individualized distance learning plan. The teachers, we checked on some feedback from the teachers. They said things are going well. Some of the difficulties they're having is the balance, the work-life balance, because the work and life is all in one when they're sitting at home working, if they're answering emails and doing meets, Google Meets and things. So that balance is there. Trying to turn off is another thing that they're struggling with, and like I said earlier, we're going to do some professional development and making sure that they can turn off when it's time to turn off, and be comfortable with not getting back to their students until the next morning at 7:30. And the transition on Monday was also another issue that they had. They felt like they bombarded students and families with information. But again, once we get into this routine here that we're in, 1, 2, 3 weeks into this thing, and potentially, like the governor said a few days ago, that it may end up going all the way through May, so we don't know yet. But throwing all that stuff on because we had them withhold all that information until that Monday last week. Some of the positives that they have coming out of there are student collaboration. They're really impressed with how well their students are collaborating and how they're doing it. So students have different access to different things outside of school that I think they're using to collaborate, my children included. One of the teachers said that they communicated with families more during the last week than they have multiple times in the past, and instead of waiting for parent-teacher conferences, they're seeing families, and they're working with parents, and in some ways teaching them how to do some of these things, because we need to have that strong partnership between the home and the school, and that's another positive that they had. No, in general, a lot of them said it was going very well, and we'll continue to improve. You know, personally, my drawback is working from home is, I love my wife, but, we're always there together, so I don't know if that's good or bad for us or not, but, you know, there's kids and there's family and all that stuff, and it's nice if you have a spot where you can go to and sit there from, you know, from during your working hours of 7:30 to 3, and then, turn it off and leave it be, and then go to be with your family and spend time with them and help them through that process. We've tried to stay very flexible for students, as we mentioned last week, and also for staff members. Let's see, childcare. Talked a little bit about this earlier, but we have about 50 students a day. 40 or so of those are Tier 1 families who are getting emergency childcare, and then a handful of those are Tier 2 families. But they've been coming. Our staff has been doing a wonderful job with them. I think that one benefit they have is that they are in the school building and they've got their devices and they've got paraprofessionals, trained staff who are working with them, and so I'm anticipating when they leave here at the time they leave, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, that a bulk, if not all, of their work is completed at that time, and they've got really good support from, you know, one person for every 6, 7, 8 kids. So that's wonderful for them to be able to have that. And these people that are emergency workers or essential workers, they then can hopefully enjoy their time with their family when they do have that time after school time. And so that is a good thing for them. All in all, it's gone really well, and I do want to thank everybody from all the staff that I mentioned: food service, transportation, technology, special ed, all of our teachers. They've been doing a wonderful job. Our cabinet and admin team has been doing a great job of troubleshooting. We've upped our meeting schedule, so we're meeting more often and making sure that we're staying on top of things that we see that come up, and we're trying to eliminate as many barriers as we can and continue to move forward. And I think 1 week into this, people have found that it's going very well. I've seen some Facebook or social media information. I've received emails that people are enjoying this. I've talked to students when I've been out at the grocery store, or if I'm doing a drive-through at McDonald's or something like that, and they're very pleased with the flexibility and but still being able to understand that they're learning and getting what they deserve from the education side. So it's going really well. I mean, I've seen other schools. I've tried to look up other distance learning plans, and ours is very, very good. And like I said before, our resources are very strong and puts us in a really good group. So, any questions on the DLP? I think I touched on all my points.
No, I think it's, again, handed to our staff here, and I think we continue to look out for those opportunities to go beyond, and really have the attitude that it's, we're doing what is needed for the students, beyond just what we have to do, but trying to seek out what we can do for each of the families to make this experience as good as it can be, given the circumstances.
Yep.
Other comments from the board members?
Before you would.
I'm going to take.
Oh.
I'm going to take silence as, there aren't any questions and everything sounds good. As people have more feedback, so just some of the things, make sure that you communicate those to either the superintendent, one of the board members, back to the principals, or what needs to be done. I know, some of the things that I've seen kind of alongside this. And I don't know if you can answer the questions on prom yet, I know that we've been gathering gathering suggestions for potentially not being able to have graduation in person, and those go to the principal at the high school, Dave Kraft. Make sure that those get sent into him to gather those, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We are working on alternative plans. The counselors, Mr. Kraft, Mr. Balloon, and staff at the high school are working on some alternate plans just to have them prepared, just in case we need them for prom, for graduation, and those types of big events that we all look forward to each year. And so there's some backup there. We don't know what's going to happen. I would look for something from the governor probably in the 20th or around there of April, being able to tell us if we're going to be back on May 5th. You know, the stuff I've seen on the news today has been, this week and next week is a crucial week. It'll be a very interesting week to see what happens, and there might be a lot more information that comes out following the next week and a half or so, where we can start to make some of those decisions. Same thing with spring athletics. So right now we're planning on having them May 5th, starting up again, but I'm sure there'll be some different information and different things like that come out, and the people get it as soon as I get it at the same exact time. In some cases, we'll have a special superintendent meeting with the commissioner, and as soon as she says it, it's already on my Star Tribune on my phone. So I don't know how they get the information, but they get it before us, and so once that happens, we'll move forward. But if we can go on May 5th, we'll be ready to roll. If it needs to be different, we're going to have some alternate plans in place.
Yeah, and I think for me, I just want to emphasize again that, I mean, the same people are still responsible for the education of the kids. That the teachers and paras and staff have the responsibility to make sure that they're following up with the kids. The kids have a responsibility for, generally what I've seen anyhow, is daily contact with somebody at the school, whether it's their first block teacher or any of their instructors that have assignments for them, that make sure that those are getting followed up. The parents can still communicate to the teachers in those ways. You can still communicate to the building principals. And if you're not getting answers there, you can always come to the superintendent or one of the board members, and we'll make sure we get to the right spot. Okay.
And
anything else to add?
I would just make sure you give them some time. And, you know, I thought I got a lot of emails before, but since we've started distance learning, you don't get to do any face-to-face interaction with people, except for through Google Meet. But my emails probably doubled in the last week compared to what I normally get, and I feel like I get too many anyway. But I did have some time to unsubscribe to a lot of sales emails, so I cleaned up a little bit. But yeah, just give them a little bit of time to respond, but they should be able to get back to you within the day, or if not, by the next morning.
Great. Anything else from any other of the board members? None here. Thanks, Jason. All right, hearing nothing else, we are adjourned.